What's up, everybody? On a Podcast Now Plus, I'm Alex. In this video, I want to review Wednesday Season 2, Part 2, talk about my feelings. Part 1, I talked about being kind of mixed. I really love Season 1, and I didn't like Season 2, Part 1 as much as I thought I would. And there was a little bit of back and forth between me and the people that watched that maybe that wasn't what everybody thought. I will say Part 2 came in a lot stronger. That's just how I want to start this video. I think it was at times much more fun. You had a lot of like the 50 plots kind of coming together. It actually did all come together, in some kind of crazy ways. So I thought, Part 2 was definitely stronger than Part 1, which naturally it probably should be because everything's kind of coming together. But I'd say as a whole, like, this was a fun season. Like, I'm glad we got it. To have waited 3 years for it is kind of insane. Hopefully we never have to do that again. And the rumor is they're going to start filming Season 3 a lot faster than they did Season 2. So hopefully we don't have to wait 3 years. Maybe it's only 2 years this time. But, okay, let's talk about Part 2. I think the one thing I want to talk about kind of more than anything, actually more than even just the ending, I want to talk about Episode 6. I thought that episode was freaking awesome. And there was a few times like I laughed out loud, not just in Episode 6, but just throughout the whole thing. It had some charm. It had some comedy. And I think it had more charm and more comedy than Part 1. But Episode 6, I mean, to give an excuse, and to be honest, I mean, like, look, it was a way of explaining things. It was a way of these two characters of Wednesday and Enid to just kind of learn, like, what makes the others tick, as well as, like, okay, you got to solve some stuff. A lot of things in Part 1, and it really continued in Part 2 to almost an annoying degree, specifically, I think, in Episode 5, where it's like, they're just not talking. I understand, like, Wednesday is not just, like, this super personable character that can just, like, have, like, she can't have long dialogues and monologues and stuff, but she's not going to go on and just kind of explain her feelings, to a different person. So maybe you needed something like that, and I think it gave a good reason to just say, hey, these characters that are not used to being in each other's bodies, they're finding out things that they had previously not found out, right? So, like, Wednesday finds out what Enid's kind of going through with the alpha stuff and the loneliness kind of fear in her. And then I'd say more importantly, although that was definitely important, but then Enid finally figures out, and it's almost, I would say maybe the one weakness is it's actually kind of downplayed, at least I felt like the entirety of Part 1 is just Wednesday is so scared about losing her, but obviously, difficult showing it, so she resorts to putting her on the sidelines, and that doesn't, that is a cliche, and we've seen that kind of before in many things, and then for her to find out in Episode 6, I really don't feel like, because I think right after Episode 6, like when they swap back and they fulfill, that kind of lesson that Lady Gaga wanted them to learn, by doing that, that's when that prophecy shifts, right? That's when it's not Enid that's going to die anymore. Now it's an Addams family member. I just feel like it was so much fun. Episode 6 was so much fun. Those two are incredibly talented, and not only do they play themselves, like Enid and Wednesday, very well, but to be able to, like, jump, I mean, I almost kind of went back and forth of, like, which one I liked more. Like, when Emma Myers was given the opportunity to just do, like, the big eye thing and kind of her head down, like, she nailed Wednesday really well as an actress. And then Jenna Ortega got to act in a way that we haven't seen her act in, like, now I haven't watched like everything she's been in, but the Disney Channel kind of origins, we haven't seen her do this in probably 5, 6, 7 years, and this is an actress that I think has taken a lot of pride of doing things kind of more like Wednesday, or you think about Tara in Scream, or like the character in that Hurry Up Tomorrow, like a lot of these movies and stuff, that Death of a Unicorn, like she's not this cheery like Disney Channel girl, and at least anymore, but she was given it one episode, to just freaking go wild, and it was actually almost uncomfortable, to see her like that. And I think that was kind of the point, right? Is to see her so out of her element, but kind of in like a cool, fun way. So just to give props to that episode, I mean, it had a character purpose of, again, letting them work things out. I was waiting. I was like, where is Lady Gaga? They made such a big deal about it, and I think her song, is what Agnes and Enid danced to in Episode 7 or 8, whichever one that was, and so that was cool. But it was like, okay, where's she gonna show up? And she's in it for like 3 minutes, so it was a little disappointing. I thought she'd be in it more, but that was such a fun episode. That was, it wasn't the most impactful episode, but it was probably the most fun you'll have watching Wednesday, and just almost this levity, like, okay, how this show operates in, 16 episodes, 15 of them operate a certain way. We're going to do 1 out of 16 where it's kind of wild. So really want to give props to that. And then, I guess the general, like, okay, well, what happens in this thing? Like I said earlier, I like that everything did come together. Slurp becomes Isaac, and you connect it to really the entire Addams family. And although I'm still not a fan of like half of them. I think Grandmama is actually quite cool in this. I've always liked her mom. And the dynamic between Wednesday and Morticia is definitely not like what we've seen, historically in Addams family. But there is, I think, a really good chemistry between like those two actresses. I'm just really not a fan actually of the boys. Pugsley, I just don't think is a great character or even that great of an actor. And then Gomez, there's just like a lack of charm, I feel like, with him. He really is always put on like he's like the weakest link. He's like everybody else is kind of in charge of him. He's sometimes comedic relief. He kind of comes in for a joke. I don't know. He comes across not in the way that I ever want Gomez to come across. I've just really, and I like that guy. He seems cool. I've watched like interviews with him, but I don't know. I've never really really the males of the Addams family, I've just not been a huge fan. Now, luckily, those are really two characters that are the least used of the Addams family. I mean, the Grandmama gets her moments, and Morticia and Wednesday get a ton of moments. So I think they picked the best people to kind of like double down on. But like everything does come together. So you have like Principal Dort, right? Like I will say, you have everything coming together. That doesn't mean everything was great. Okay, and that's kind of where it's like I liked it, but I didn't love it, and I think I still like season 1 more. Because, yeah, you had everything come together, but it's like, all right, well, he's really just this money hungry. Like, what was this hidden thing with him? Well, you find out about that cult stuff, right? And it was just a way, really, for, like, Bianca to get in there. And it's like, it very much felt like just a side plot, just to be a side plot. In fact, I told my wife, it felt like you had to make him like a semi-villain, and then his motivations weren't even all that good. And I think they did it because you had season 1, Gwendolyn Christie's character. You had her kind of being this, is she bad? Is she good? Now, they were both great. Like, I thought both of them as characters, as actors, were phenomenal. And Steve Buscemi did such a good job. But I don't know, like, overall, he was just, like, I thought maybe it would tie more into, like, the main thing. He really always stayed in his lane. Like, that really was such a side thing that always remained a side thing with no intention of ever, getting into the main stuff. So you had that element to it. You had the Tyler and his mom and Slurp that becomes Isaac. Whatever. I think I do like Tyler, and I like that kind of. I just don't know if they emphasized it as well as they probably should. The idea that, like, maybe there is still that good in him, right? Because he wasn't, like, just pure evil in season 1. The thing that I had, I guess, the biggest problem with is when you saw him in season 2, part 1, he's just, like, always bad. Now he's locked in an insane asylum, and he's in, like, a bad situation. And I do like these elements of, like, even when, like, Wednesday's getting buried, right? Just his facial expression. He's a really good actor. Like, you can tell there's just a small part of him, not like the whole part, but there's a small part of him that feels bad and like doesn't want that to happen. And really, actually the whole time, like kind of seeing his mom and uncle, I guess, right, their relationship, what it actually was, and seeing how he played a part in that. Like, I liked that angle. I just felt it was such it felt right. It did feel right to his character, but it didn't feel right to his character compared to part 1. Like, he really seemed like he was just like a completely lost, like, evil individual. And then now all of a sudden they started giving him like shades, right? Like, maybe there's still some good in him, but they didn't really show that actually at all in part 1. So it kind of just felt a little misplaced. But the ending, like having like a dynamic. I mean, they did that with season 1. I'm trying to think of like that one's ending. Like, I do like it overall. It's got the past and present, really repeating the past with Gomez and then doing it with Pugsley. And I think the guy who plays Isaac, pretty cool. There's some elements of like Joker in him where he's kind of like, he's got almost like a little bit of a dance to his step. Like, he's a little all over the place in a good way. I liked him overall. I think the thing is just this show kind of is at its best when, I mean, like, it's always solid. I don't want to like understate that. Like these characters generally are very good, and most of them are generally really good. And like, you almost get like comfortable with like how good Enid and Wednesday are, and then those two together just have like a really, not necessarily a really nice relationship, but it's like, it's a cool one. fun. You have a character like Agnes, who is awesome. Like, so I think we talked about that in part 1. She's easily, I think, the standout. Now, I think in part 1, I said she might actually was maybe my favorite character and favorite actress of that group. Because of episode 6, it's hard to say that she beats like Emma Myers and Jenna Ortega, but Agnes is phenomenal throughout all of this entire season. And her arc, I actually would say, was definitely cool, right? This idea of she kind of just leeches off of people, and she has, she wants to belong, and she goes to like that meeting, with Christopher Lloyd and all that stuff, but she has this sense of that she does feel, an outcast amongst outcasts, but she wants to belong, but her idea of belonging is, she's like a minion for Wednesday, but she also is trying to like copy her so much, and obviously like that relationship gets kind of all over the place in episode 6, but eventually, she has to be really scolded by Wednesday and then talked to by Enid to figure out like, hey, just be you, and obviously that's look, is it like a cliche story? It's like, you just be you, like don't try to act like other people. Like, yeah, but I really like how it's done. I think she's super, super good as an actress, and she's just a freaking fun character. Like, she pops in just at like the best time. She's got some like really witty lines to her, and she's just fun. She's just and I think, again, that's kind of where the show generally also is at its strength. I think it's generally at its strength when it's trying to do like a murder mystery or just a mystery in general, and then also when it's just kind of charming with these characters that are just like really likable in their own way. And I would say part 2 had that more. At the same time, like, it had like 50 things that were still happening. I don't think all 50 things needed to happen. And it definitely, again, I think as a season, I think it felt kind of underwhelming compared to season 1. But I had fun. I definitely had fun. I think it went a little too big, I think, was kind of the overall thing. But, you end it in an interesting place of like, all right, like maybe are you going back to the school? At least the first part, you imagine, of season 3 is not at school. It's about, the search for Enid. And again, I think when you have so much stuff that's going on, you actually leave the season in too many places as well, which they kind of do, right? Like, you have Wednesday and Fester going after Enid. I guess really, well, maybe it's only like 2 things, right? Pugsley kind of gets a friend, I guess, finally. You have the resolution with all the villainy, in season 2. But then you also have Tyler, right? Kind of going off into maybe like the support group for Hydes, if that's a good way of thinking about it. Maybe it's going to be something to kind of use his power. So you kind of end it where you got 2 different paths, and I'm sure those will converge as well. But it was fun. It definitely was more fun than part 1. I think a lot of that was just you introduced so many things, and I think one of the things I talked about with part 1 was like, okay, this slurp, like, why is he there? That felt like such a B plot, even like just how it originated in part 1, in episode 1 or whatever it was, that by the time you got now, it's like, all right, well, thank God. At least they made him the villain. I guess I should eat my words, because I was wondering, like, okay, it feels so secondary, kind of like the principal, but like him, he always, I guess, was supposed to be secondary. You just maybe were kind of fooled into thinking he was a main thing. But like for Slurp, at least, okay, he was like the main villain, at the end of the day. I mean, that kind of jumped, right? You had like the Raven controlling lady, which she was really good, but you had her being dispatched immediately in episode 5. Tyler was the threat in 4, and then he really wasn't a threat after what, like episode 5? He wasn't a threat, and then it was just Wednesday not letting him go. That's that jumping, by the way, that I don't like. I think there was just a lot of jumping of like, okay, who's the threat? It's this. Now it's this. Now it's this. Almost every episode, it was actually a different threat, if you think about it. 5 was Tyler. 6 was more, I guess, the looming time of them swapping bodies. And then 7 and 8 was more of a focus, I guess, on Isaac and like getting that resolution. So, or I guess even Principal Dort as well. So it kind of jumped around a bit there with like villains. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and hope to see you all on the next one.